Sunlight bathed the streets of the small town of Havenwood, Massachusetts, where every house had its own story and every resident had their own secrets. In this quiet and cozy place, where families strive for the ideal life, our story of Lisa and Tom Watson begins. Lisa Watson, a 35-year-old housewife, was known for her beauty and the warmth she shared with everyone who walked through the door. Her days were spent tending to the house and preparing for the evenings she and her husband, Tom, a successful financial analyst, spent having candlelit dinners or hanging out with friends. But despite the seeming idle, a sense of loneliness grew in her heart, as Tom was often away from home because of his work. Tom Watson, at 40, was a model of success. He tried to provide for his family, but the price was his constant employment and absence from home, which slowly but surely undermined the foundations of their marriage. Tom loved Lisa, but did not notice how he was gradually losing her, absorbed in his financial reports and eternal business trips. Next door to the Watsons' house lived Rick Martin, a 20-year-old college student who was not only youthful and energetic, but also extremely charming. Lisa and Rick often met while walking their dogs or at a local cafe, and their innocent conversations gradually developed into friendship. Rick listened to Lisa, asked her opinions, and gave her the compliments she so lacked in her communication with her husband. One day, when Tom was late at work, Lisa and Rick ran into each other in the park. They spent the evening walking under the stars and sharing personal stories. Lisa felt her heart beat faster in Rick's presence, something she hadn't felt in a long time. But their closeness did not go unnoticed. Neighbors began to whisper, watching their meetings, and rumors reached Tom's ears. Despite initial distrust, Tom decided to hire private detective James Harper to follow Lisa while he was on another business trip. James was an experienced professional who could easily uncover any scam without leaving a trace of his presence. The story of Lisa and Tom, which began as a romantic fairy tale, gradually turned into a thriller with unpredictable developments leading to dark and dangerous corners of human passions. Autumn leaves fell softly on the cobblestone sidewalks of Havenwood, creating a golden cushion at every step. But the beauty of autumn could not hide the worries that enveloped the Watson house. Tom Watson returned from another business trip filled with heavy thoughts and doubts about the fidelity of his wife Lisa. His inner world was filled with anxiety, because rumors and sidelong glances from neighbors did not give him peace. Lisa greeted him with her usual joy, which now seemed forced to him. She cooked dinner, and they sat down at the table in a tense atmosphere. The conversation was constrained and full of omissions. After dinner, Lisa said that she was going to meet her friends at a nearby cafe. Tom found this strange, since Lisa usually preferred to spend her evenings at home. His suspicions only grew stronger, and he decided that it was time to act. Tom called in James Harper, a private detective recommended to him by a colleague. James had a reputation for being able to find any information, no matter how well hidden. Tom described the situation, and James immediately set to work, promising to keep Tom informed of any developments. Over the next few days, James followed Lisa, taking discreet photographs and recording her encounters with Rick Martin, a young neighbor who found himself in Lisa's company far too often. James installed several hidden cameras and used GPS trackers to precisely track her movements. One evening, when Lisa told Tom she was going to visit a friend, the detective followed her to a secluded park where she met Rick. James was able to record their conversation, in which they discussed their relationship and future plans. This recording became the key evidence of Lisa's infidelity. When Tom received the photos and audio recording of Lisa and Rick's meeting, his world collapsed. The deception he had been so reluctant to acknowledge was now impossible to ignore. His heart filled with rage and despair, and he felt the last drop of trust in his wife draining from him. Now that the truth was clear and unambiguous, Tom began to plot how to deal with the traitor. Against the backdrop of the beautiful but fading autumn, a darkness was growing in his heart that would soon lead to irreversible consequences. Autumn in Havenwood continued its majestic march, enveloping the town in a cold wind and colorful leaves. But in the Watson house, the atmosphere became increasingly gloomy and tense. After Tom learned of Lisa's betrayal, every day brought him only pain and rage. He tried to maintain the appearance of normality, But his internal state worsened with every hour spent under the same roof with Lisa. Tom could no longer trust his wife. Her every move aroused suspicion. He began hiring additional detectives to constantly monitor Lisa. Under his watchful gaze and constant control, Lisa felt increasingly caged. She noticed that Tom had changed, becoming withdrawn and cold, but she could not understand the reason for his alienation, since she did not know about his knowledge of her secret. One evening, when Lisa returned home from a meeting with Rick that Tom had secretly arranged to spy on her, she found Tom unusually calm. His inexplicable calm frightened her even more. He asked her about her day with an unusually relaxed smile that did not reach his eyes. Lisa answered evasively, feeling that her every word was being weighed. Tom continued to watch Lisa, hiding his true feelings and plans. He began spending more time in his office, doing strange things that he did not expect. Busy with work. Her attempts to talk to him often ended in silence or short, abrupt answers. Lisa felt that a wall of silence had grown between them, which she could not overcome. Realizing that she could no longer live in this state of uncertainty and suspicion, Lisa decided to have a serious talk with Tom. She chose an evening when Tom seemed less busy and brought up the topic of their relationship. "Tom, I think something has gone wrong between us. Can we talk?" She began hesitantly, sitting across from him in the living room. Tom slowly looked up at her, his eyes cold and unreadable. "Speak," he said briefly, crossing his arms over his chest. "I feel like you've become distant from me. Is it something I did? Maybe we could try to fix it? I really care about our marriage, Tom." Her voice became more pleading with each word. Tom froze for a moment, then slowly stood up and walked to the window, looking out onto the street where the wind continued to play with the autumn leaves. "Lisa, I value our marriage too, but I need time to sort out some things." His voice was calm, but there was a hint of weariness in it. Lisa realized that Tom was not ready to share his feelings, and this only increased her feelings of guilt and anxiety. She did not know that Tom already knew about her affair with Rick, and this ignorance made their conversation even more painful. Tom continued to plot his revenge, returning to his notes and books every night. His plans were becoming more concrete, and he knew that the time for action would soon come. He had already formed a plan in his mind for how he could arrange an accident for Rick that would spare him the agony of heartbreak and betrayal. While Tom continued his secret preparations, Lisa felt her life becoming more and more complicated. She could not imagine that the consequences of her actions could lead to such tragic and irreversible changes in their destinies. Tom Watson's internal struggle had reached a climax. The desire to punish both Lisa for her betrayal and Rick for his interference in his marriage was becoming all-encompassing. Tom immersed himself in the study of criminal cases, analyzing the various methods and consequences of unplanned incidents. He spent hours considering the possibilities that could lead to the discreet elimination of Rick without further suspicion against him. Tom began to monitor Rick's schedule, learning when the young man was usually alone. He noted the times Rick went to the gym, when he went to school, and even when he met with friends. All this time, Tom kept his observations a secret from everyone, especially from Lisa, who continued to lead her normal life, unaware of the dark thoughts tormenting her husband. In order to carry out his plans, Tom began purchasing various items that could be useful for his plans. He purchased several electronic surveillance devices that could be used to track Rick's movements. Tom also invested in high-quality video and audio recording equipment to document Rick's encounters that could serve as an alibi. After carefully studying the routes Rick usually took, Tom began planning how best to stage the accident. One option was a dark, secluded spot in the park where Rick sometimes went jogging in the evening. Tom considered staging a fall from a high cliff that would look like an accident, the result of a bad step. As he planned his every move, Tom also began to study methods that would allow him to remain in the shadows. He knew that whatever he did must not attract the attention of the police or arouse the suspicion of those who might connect him to a possible tragedy. Each evening, as he reviewed his notes and adjusted his plans, Tom became more withdrawn and obsessive. The tension and plotting continued to grow on Tom. As the night wore on, and the dark streets of Havenwood grew quiet, his plans became more concrete. Tom developed methods to erase any possible traces that might point to his involvement in the upcoming event. He acquired several new SIM cards and throwable phones to coordinate his actions without the risk of being tracked. He also began researching chemicals that could be used to stage an accident. Tom visited various forums and websites that discussed accidents and chemicals that could cause instant but subtle reactions. It was all part of his quest to create a scenario that would be as believable as possible. In parallel with these preparations, Tom began spending more time away from home, under the guise of sudden work meetings and urgent matters. He used this time to surreptitiously follow Rick, learning the details of his daily routine and habits. This allowed him to plan more precisely how and when best to carry out his dark intentions. Tom kept a close eye on the places Rick frequented, including the gym and the schools. He took photographs of the surrounding area, noting potential accident sites. An important element was the underground tunnel system beneath the city, where Rick sometimes ran with friends. Tom considered using these tunnels to stage a fatal encounter. While Tom carefully thought out every aspect of his plan, he also took care to create an alibi that would protect him from any investigations. He planned to be at a social event with friends at the crucial moment, which would be confirmed by CCTV and the testimonies of the participants. This gave him confidence that his connection to the upcoming events would remain undetected. Each day that Tom got closer to the execution of his plan, he felt the tension growing. But his determination to remain invisible and unwavering only grew stronger. He knew that the time to act would soon come, and his carefully planned actions would change the lives of everyone involved in this tragic game. There would come a day when the streets of Havenwood would be shrouded in thick fog, symbolizing the impending tragedy. Tom chose that day to carry out his plan, when the world around him seemed frozen and detached from reality. Under cover of the early morning fog, while most of the residents were still asleep, Tom left the house, leaving Lisa in the dark about his true plans. Before taking action, Tom made his final preparations. He checked his equipment, the cameras he would use to document the accident, and the chemicals that would create the illusion of an accident. All items were carefully placed in the trunk of his car, where they would not attract attention. He also took gloves and other items that would ensure that his fingerprints would not be found at the scene. Tom knew his plan required impeccable timing and precision. He drove to a pre-selected spot in the park where Rick usually went jogging in the morning. There, in the solitude, where the trees provided natural isolation, Tom began preparing for his act. He positioned the cameras so that they would capture Rick's fall, but would not show him setting up the scene. Every step was calculated to exclude him from the frame. Following the plan, Tom used his knowledge of Rick's behavior to predict when he would appear on the trail. He placed obstacles along the trail that were designed to look like accidentally left-behind items that could cause a fall or accident. He then camouflaged himself in the bushes, watching the road leading to the supposed scene of the tragedy. Rick's form was barely discernible when he appeared, running through the fog. Tom controlled his approach, his heart pounding in anticipation of the outcome. As Rick approached the camouflage trap, time seemed to stand still. Tom held the remote control of the cameras ready to capture the key moment. Rick stepped on the prepared obstacle and his steps slowed. He tried to keep his balance, but the slippery surface and the unexpected obstacle did their job. His body leaned forward and he fell, rolling down the slope of the rocky path. Tom pressed the record button. The cameras recorded the fall but did not show his role in this scene. Tom remained in hiding until he was sure Rick was still lying there. Only then did he slowly retreat, trying not to leave any traces. taking his equipment. He returned to the car with the thought that his plan was completed, and now he had to act further to secure his alibi and finally get rid of the consequences of his actions. Every step Tom took was calculated to ensure that he was as safe as possible from any suspicion. After he was sure that Rick remained motionless on the ground, he carefully gathered all his belongings, removed traces of his presence, and camouflaged the scene so that it looked like an accident. He then quickly, but without haste, returned to his car, which was parked on a deserted street, far from the scene of the incident. As he drove home, his thoughts were filled with a mixture of relief and tension. Tom knew that now would come the hardest part of his plan, maintaining an alibi and managing the consequences of what he had done. He turned on the radio, trying to calm his nerves with the classical music that always helped him concentrate. Lisa was waiting for him at home, and to his surprise, she was already aware of the incident. The neighbors began to gather, discussing the news of the accident in the park, which had already been spread by local news channels. Tom joined the conversation, expressing his concern and surprise, while carefully hiding his true state. Over the next few days, Tom carefully followed the events, pretending to be a concerned and grieving member of the community. He attended a local church, where he prayed for Rick's soul, and attended community meetings to discuss safety in the city. All the while, he carefully monitored Lisa's reactions, who was shocked by what had happened and genuinely worried about Rick's family. Tom used this time to strengthen his relationship with Lisa, showing his support and concern. He tried to be there for her, comforting and supporting her during difficult times, which he believed would help him restore their relationship after all the trials. He knew that his actions, although extreme, would eventually lead to the rebirth of their family. At the same time, Tom continued to follow the police investigation, using his connections in law enforcement to keep up to date with the investigation. He made sure that any evidence that could link him to the incident was destroyed or disguised so that no one could suspect him of deliberately doing so. All his movements and actions were designed to remain in the shadows, without drawing unnecessary attention to himself. The quiet streets of Havenwood were shrouded in the evening fog, and the Watson household was filled with anxiety as the police investigation began. Investigators worked slowly but thoroughly, getting closer to solving the incident in the park. Tom followed the police every step, masking his concern with the guise of a caring husband and active member of the community. At this time, rumors began to circulate in the city about the strange circumstances of Rick's fall. People spoke of suspicious footprints in the area where the tragedy occurred and a possible connection with a prominent resident of the city who had been seen there a few days before the incident. Tom knew that he had to act carefully so that his name would not end up among the rumors. Lisa, despite her grief and shock over Rick's death, began to notice changes in Tom's behavior. His nervousness, frequent absences from home, and mysterious calls made her suspicious. She tried to maintain a normal relationship, but the more she observed her husband, the more she felt that there was something more behind his care. One evening, when Tom went out to supposedly meet friends, Lisa decided to check his office, which he always carefully locked. In his office, she found a stack of documents and materials related to various methods of covering up crimes and observations that, in her opinion, were not related to his work. Lisa's heart sank when she realized that Tom could be involved in Rick's death. Lisa faced a moral dilemma. Should she report her suspicions to the police or try to sort things out on her own? After much deliberation, she decided to speak to Tom directly, hoping to hear the truth from him. Meanwhile, investigators discovered that the security cameras installed in the park had been turned off hours before Rick's incident. They began looking for witnesses who might have been near the security cameras that evening. The information gathering led them to Tom, whose alibi suddenly began to crumble. When police approached Tom to question him, he tried to remain calm, but his answers seemed noticeably tense. Investigators said they had enough evidence to charge him with tampering with evidence and possibly playing a role in Rick's death. The investigation culminated when the police discovered the hidden notes and materials that Tom had used to plan his crime. The evidence was overwhelming, and Tom was arrested. Lisa, standing nearby, felt a mixture of relief and grief, knowing that the truth had come out, but their lives had been changed forever. With the arrest of Tom Watson, the small town of Havenwood was engulfed in shock and disbelief. News of his arrest spread quickly among the locals, with many unable to believe that such a respected man could commit such a crime. At the same time, for some, his actions became an explanation for the recent unexplained events and rumors that had